The jeweled collar flashed once, and the woman on the auction block crushed her thumb into her palm. I stopped breathing. Above her, Khepri Station's eclipse shield reduced the star to a black coin ringed in white fire. That dead light poured through the observation glass, turning the auction chamber silver and every bidder faceless. Ventilation fans groaned behind the walls. The air tasted of ozone, perfume, and overheated circuitry. Lot 7, the broker announced. His amplified voice vibrated through the steel beneath my boots. Female. High-value diplomatic education. Verified multilingual fluency. No surviving claims of rank. The bidders laughed softly at that last line. She did not look at them. A restraint field held her inside a circle of blue light, and a narrow black collar rested against her throat. Her hair had been cut unevenly near the jaw. Dust darkened one sleeve. But I knew the angle of her chin. More than that, I knew the hand hanging beside her hip. Thumb pressed into palm. For fingers closed over it. Hold position. Danger watching. Seralyne had invented the signal years ago because palace walls carried sound. She had used it during assassination drills, diplomatic traps, and once beneath a banquet table while smiling at the man who had poisoned her cup. No one else knew it. No one living was supposed to know I did. The broker opened the bidding at 40,000 sovereign marks. A shipping magnate lifted 2 fingers. A Threxian mind factor answered from behind a vapor mask. I felt the compact pulse pistol beneath my coat, warm from my body. 9 yards separated me from the platform. 2 guards stood at its base. 4 more watched from recessed balconies. The collar's status light pulsed in time with a security note above the stage. 1 shot could darken the room. A second could break the field. After that, every sealed door on Khepri would become a wall. Seralyne's thumb pressed deeper. Hold. My hand moved away from the weapon. I took out a bidding slate instead. The glass felt cold and slick beneath my fingertips. 60,000, called Prefect Ordinve, listed on my slate as a customs official from the Perseid corridor. He had no customs insignia tonight. 75, said Mirasdal, whose mining consortium owned 3 labor moons. 100. The final voice came through an encrypted remote channel. No face appeared. Only a white heraldic mark shaped like a severed crown. A hush spread across the chamber. Even the broker straightened. I lowered my head as if reconsidering the price and opened the slate's private ledger. Ordinve, Mirasdal, Crown Channel, Cipher Class 9. Then the shipping magnate. The broker. The station registrar who authenticated ownership transfers. I wrote down every name, bidder code, and transmission route. My old training returned in fragments. The cadence of surveillance sweeps, the reflection of guards in polished metal, the half-second delay before a hidden camera changed focus. Seralyne remained perfectly still while strangers calculated her value. Only her hand spoke. Hold. Observe. Remember. The price climbed. 120,000. 150. Each bid drew a soft chime from the ceiling and added another name to my ledger. The collar reflected the eclipse like a blade laid across her throat. Then, at last, Seralyne raised her eyes. They passed over me without pause. Not recognition. Not relief. Nothing the watchers could measure. Yet her thumb stayed buried in her palm. The auction bell sounded once. Final bids were approaching. I encrypted the ledger and felt the pulse pistol against my ribs again. I had entered Khepri Station looking for a vanished princess. Now I had found her, in a room full of people confident enough to purchase her in public. The only question was why she was ordering the one man who had sworn to protect her not to move. A thin crystal glass rotated above the auction dais, catching the eclipse in shards of black and copper. Somewhere beneath the floor, coolant pumps throbbed with the slow rhythm of an exhausted heart. Seralyne's gaze reached Elias at last. It held for less than half a second. Then her face hardened. No, she said. Her voice carried through the cold hall. That is not him. The auctioneer followed her line of sight. A scanner built into his silver cuff blinked green as it sampled her pulse, pupil dilation, and skin temperature. Elias understood. The slavers were not merely watching the crowd. They were using her recognition to identify anyone who might still be loyal to the throne. You know that man? The auctioneer asked. Seralyne looked at Elias again, this time with the remote contempt reserved for a stranger who had stared too long. My bodyguard died at Salus Gate. The word struck cleanly. No hesitation. No measurable grief. To the scanner, Elias became a ghost. Ordenvey turned in his seat, studying him without the prefect's insignia he usually wore along the Perseid corridor. 2 rows below, Mirasdal rested both hands on a cane of polished lunar iron. Neither man bid. They were waiting for something. A servant drone descended beside Seralyne and offered a conductive tasting glass filled with blue mineral water. She accepted it with both hands. Elias kept his eyes on the dais while his thumb moved across the encrypted ledger inside his sleeve, sorting the bidders by shipping rights, customs access, and labor contracts. The pattern would not settle. Too many officials. Too few private collectors. Seralyne lifted the glass, but the collar's field made her fingers tremble. A faint hum entered the crystal. Then she squeezed. The glass broke with a bright, brittle snap. Blue water splashed across the black platform. The auctioneer recoiled. Seralyne let the fragments fall one by one against the conductive floor. Click, click, click. Pause. Click. 3 quick taps followed. Elias stopped breathing. It was an old palace cadence, built for jammed comms and smoke-filled corridors. They had used it years before when words could expose a protected route. Do not save me. Find a list. The final shard cut no flesh. She had chosen its edge carefully. She pressed it against the wet floor, completing a circuit through the auction terminal. For one flickering instant, the overhead display abandoned her sale price. A cargo manifest flashed across the glass wall. Names, transit codes, royal security classifications. Then the auctioneer kicked the shard away, and the numbers returned. The hall filled with nervous laughter and the sharp smell of ionized metal. Seralyne lowered her head as if the break had been clumsy. But Elias had seen enough. Ordenvey's custom seal appeared beside a restricted transport lane. Mirasdal's consortium controlled the destination docks. Beside both entries sat authorization marks belonging to ministers sworn to Seralyne's family. This was not a kidnapping arranged for profit. The auction was a receipt. Everyone bidding tonight was purchasing a place in whatever government came after hers. Elias closed the ledger and removed his hand from the pistol. Saving one prisoner by force would leave the machine intact and confirm to every watcher that the dead bodyguard still lived. Across the dais, Seralyne finally looked at him without looking away. Her expression gave him nothing. Her empty hand gave him the rest, tapping once against her thigh. Time. The auction bell sounded twice. Final bidding had begun, and Elias now knew the list existed. What he did not know was how to reach it before the people named on it finished buying a kingdom. Final bids are now binding, the auctioneer said, his voice flattened by the station speakers. Copper light seeped around the eclipsed star and washed the chamber in the color of old blood. Elias raised 2 fingers. 1 decommissioned Asterian-class corvette. The room fell quiet except for the dry hiss of recycled air. Ordenvey turned in his seat, the prefect's bare collar unable to hide the pale band where his insignia usually rested. Mirasdal stopped smiling. Above the dais, the valuation lattice unfolded around Elias's offer in columns of blue light. Hull integrity, 81%. Helium, 3 reserve, 14 months. Registered owner, Elias Vale. The auctioneer stared at the figure pulsing beneath it. A warship was worth more than every bid combined. It was also Elias's transport, shelter, weapons platform, and only legal path beyond Khepri Station. Seralyne's fingers tightened around the edge of the dais. Her thumb did not enter her palm this time. Verification required, the auctioneer said. Elias pressed his wrist seal against the bidder rail. Cold glass bit his skin. The station extracted his command signature, then reached across the dock network and stripped his vessel from his registry. Somewhere beyond the chamber walls, clamps locked around the corvette with 4 distant impacts. Ownership transferred. The ship's familiar telemetry vanished from his implant. 4 years of stored routes, engine harmonics, and cabin pressure dissolved into a gray notice. Access revoked. The auctioneer swallowed. Lot 7 is awarded. No applause followed. A broker approached Seralyne carrying a black transfer wand. Its tip touched the collar at her throat, and a thin electronic whine climbed until Elias felt it behind his teeth. State acceptance, the broker ordered. Accepted, Elias said. Property authority transferred. The word property lingered in the sterile air. Seralyne looked at him then. No disguise remained in the angle of her chin. No princess either. Only someone waiting to learn what kind of man had just purchased her. The control seal appeared above Elias's wrist. Security expected him to close his hand and bind the collar to his pulse. Instead, he selected release. The broker lunged for the interface. Too late. The collar opened with a hard metallic click. Seralyne caught it before it struck the floor. A red line remained around her throat, stark against her altered skin. Elias took the collar's ownership chip between his fingers and snapped it across the bidder rail. She leaves without it. Alarm tones struck from every wall at once. White lights shifted to emergency crimson. Transparent shutters slammed over the exits, and the air took on the sharp ozone smell of charged containment fields. Orton Vey rose first. You accepted title under interstellar property law. I accepted custody, Elias said, then ended it. Release before export certification is null, the auctioneer whispered. It is also sabotage of a lawful transfer. Mirasdal touched 2 fingers to his ear, summoning security. Around the chamber, bidders backed away as armed wardens emerged from recessed doors. Their rifles remained lowered, but targeting beams crawled over Elias's coat and settled across his chest. Seralyne stepped down from the dais under her own power. She did not move behind him. She came to his side, the dead collar held like a piece of evidence. The station speakers crackled. Docking privileges revoked. Transit gates sealed. Elias Vale and Lot 7 are ordered to surrender for detention. The floor vibrated as bulkheads closed throughout Khepri Station. Elias glanced toward the darkened viewing ports, where his former ship now belonged to the auction house. He had bought Seralyne's legal chain with his last road home, and broken it before the galaxy could call the exchange complete. Seralyne turned the collar in her hands. A faint service light blinked inside its fractured clasp. They think this locked us in, she said softly. Beyond the shuttered doors, boots gathered in disciplined rows. The collar's light blinked again against her palm. Then Seralyne looked toward the maintenance seams beneath the dais. Let them. The first impact struck the sealed auction doors hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling seams. White security lights strobed across the empty bidders' chairs, and the air smelled of overheated wiring. Elias raised his pulse pistol toward the entrance, but Seralyne was already kneeling beside the dais. 6 seconds between strikes, he said. I need 4. She twisted the broken collar until its fractured clasp exposed 2 silver contacts. The service light pulsed against her fingertips. Elias understood then. The device had not merely restrained her. It had authenticated every door through which she had been dragged. Seralyne pressed the contacts into the narrow maintenance seam. Blue current snapped across the metal. Heat scorched her palm, but she held the collar in place until the dais lights died and something heavy released beneath them. A section of floor lifted half an inch. Now, she whispered. Elias wedged his fingers under the warm alloy and pulled. Seralyne slipped through first, then caught his wrist and dragged him down as the auction doors burst inward above them. They landed inside a conduit barely 3 feet high. Cold condensation soaked Elias's knees. Behind them, Seralyne jammed the collar into the hatch mechanism and sent another pulse through it. The panel sealed just as security beams sliced across the opening. The collar went dark. Its last useful charge was gone. Left, Seralyne said. Elias glanced at the identical tunnels. You remember this? Every turn. She crawled ahead without waiting. During her transfer, she had counted corners by vibration. Coolant pumps, freight elevators, then the deep tremor of the station's eclipse-side reactor. Elias followed through freezing pipes and strips of amber emergency light. Above them, boots hammered across grating. Below, machinery groaned like something asleep beneath ice. At the third junction, Seralyne removed a service cover and reached into a fiber-optic trunk. A shard from the broken collar slid between the luminous filaments. The access panel recognized the restraint's transport certificate and opened a logistics cache. Rows of shipping manifests filled the small screen. No hidden cipher. No distant clue. The sale orders were already signed. Seralyne scrolled once, then stopped. Elias saw Royal Guard insignias beside civilian names, physicians, teachers, dock families, even palace kitchen workers. Each entry carried the same destination code. Thanatos extraction belt. How many, he asked. Her burned hand left a faint mark on the screen. 8,412. The manifest showed them divided among prison carriers scheduled to depart Khepri Station within 18 hours. Buyers had relabeled them as hereditary assets. At the mines, debt contracts would outlive the prisoners and pass to their children. Elias copied the files to his pistol's targeting memory, sacrificing its combat calibration to preserve the evidence. The weapon dimmed in his hand. It could still fire, but no longer aim for him. Seralyne pulled the shard free. Warning symbols flooded the panel. Their access had triggered a route purge, and blast shutters began closing through the conduit network. One slammed behind them with a metallic concussion. Another descended ahead, leaving a narrowing strip of copper light. Seralyne seized Elias by the sleeve and pulled him through. The shutter clipped his coat and locked inches behind his boots. They emerged onto an abandoned observation spine facing the eclipse. Black sunlight ringed the planet below. Across the glass, hundreds of prison carrier transponders ignited one by one. "We can no longer run before they launch," Seralyne said. Elias looked at the names stored inside his damaged weapon, then at the fleet assembling in the dark. 18 hours remained before a kingdom disappeared into the mines. Cold leaked through the observation glass, frosting its edges while prison carrier engines pulsed beyond it like red embers in deep water. Elias lowered the damaged pulse pistol and watched its diagnostic symbols drift without alignment. 18 hours was enough to flee Khepri Station. It was not enough to intercept hundreds of carriers without a ship. "The manifest can stop them," he said. Seralyne pressed her burned palm against her coat. "Evidence does not frighten men who own the courts." "No, but ownership law frightens men who own property." Elias knelt beside an emergency communications panel. Its casing felt rough with oxidation, and the air behind it smelled of hot insulation. One shot from his pistol fused the lock. The bolt struck 3 inches wide. He opened the panel by hand and connected the weapon's memory core to the station network. Seralyne saw the authorization screen brighten. "You cannot transmit through the lockdown." "I'm not transmitting out." Elias selected every commercial registry on Khepri Station. Insurers, creditors, shipping syndicates, bonded warehouses, and the automated tribunals that settled property disputes without waiting for judges. Then he attached the 8,412 names to the transport contracts and marked each contract as fraudulent royal seizure. The system demanded a licensed claimant. Elias placed his thumb against the reader. "You surrendered your legal identity when you violated the ownership transfer," Seralyne said. "I still have one asset recognized by the station." His human military bond appeared on the glass, the pension attached to every year he had served, the account meant to carry him through old age now that his warship was gone. Elias pledged all of it as security against the claim. The station accepted. Blue light crawled across his knuckles. Somewhere behind the walls, relays began clicking in swift metallic chains. He was no longer asking Khepri's authorities to show mercy. He was making every carrier legally poisonous to touch. If Miras Dal launched the prisoners while ownership was disputed, his mines could lose their operating bonds. If Orden Vey ordered the contracts erased, the insurers would interpret it as destruction of collateral. Neither man needed a conscience. They only needed creditors. "Claim registered," the station announced. All listed transports suspended pending adjudication. Across the observation glass, the red transponders changed to amber. One after another, hundreds of engines throttled down, their vibration fading beneath the floor. The 18-hour countdown vanished. Seralyne stared at the carriers. Her thumb pressed once into her palm, but this time no danger signal followed. "You saved them without firing." Elias disconnected the memory core. "I delayed their sale. With everything you had left." The pension balance on the panel read 0. Beneath it, a second notice appeared, claimant identity exposed to all challenged parties. Elias had bought the prisoner's time, but he had also given Orden Vey and Miras Dal a legal target they could reach without searching the maintenance network. Station speakers crackled. Orden's voice arrived smooth and close, carrying over the cold spine. "Elias, withdraw the claim, surrender the princess, and your bond will be restored." A pause. Then thousands of prisoner designations began scrolling across the glass. "Refuse, and I will void their protected status before the insurers can convene." Elias looked towards Seralyne. This decision belonged to neither Bodyguard nor Princess alone. She stepped to the transmitter, but he covered the control with his hand. "Not your face," he said quietly. "Not yet." Her eyes settled on his fingers. "Then what do you propose?" Elias opened a direct channel to every suspended carrier and pushed the manifests into their internal systems. Guards, pilots, and captives would now see the same names. The secret became too widely held to erase cleanly. "I propose we make obedience more expensive than truth." Amber lights burned across the dark fleet. Then the first carrier rejected Ordenvay's command. A second followed. A third. Elias raised his damaged pistol, not toward an enemy, but toward the station's central relay. "Tell your prefect the claim stands." Seralyne touched the broadcast key. Her voice entered every ship, calm as winter sunlight. "The claim stands." Beyond the glass, hundreds of carriers went silent together, and Khepri Station turned all its weapons toward the observation spine. A warning tone rolled through the observation spine, low enough to vibrate in the teeth. Red targeting lattices crawled across the glass, dividing the suspended carriers into neat, lethal squares. Seralyne's fingers remained on the broadcast key. Elias caught her wrist before she could open the channel. "They'll trace the signal." "They already have." Her skin was cold beneath his palm. Across the fleet network, prisoner manifests vanished from public screens one by one, replaced by Ordenvay's seal and a single directive: unverified royal claim. Detain assets pending authentication. Then a second line appeared. Failure to comply will authorize terminal containment. Inside the nearest carrier, pale faces crowded behind a narrow viewport. Guards were no longer watching the station. They were watching their prisoners. Waiting. Seralyne pulled free. She removed the copper pin holding her collarless prison tunic, closed at the shoulder, and pressed its point into her palm. A bead of silver-blue blood welled beneath the light. Elias understood. "No, your claim stopped the ships," she said. "It cannot stop frightened men from erasing evidence. Once you authenticate, every sensor on Khepri will know where we are. Then stand away from me." The words struck harder because she whispered them. Elias did not move. Seralyne placed her bleeding palm against the relay plate. Its surface brightened, reading the branching geometry beneath her skin. The machine chimed once. Not an auction bell. An old imperial cadence that had not sounded publicly since the coup. She opened every channel. Static hissed through the spine, carrying the dry smell of scorched circuitry. Her face appeared across thousands of cockpit displays, guard terminals, and prisoner cells. No veil. No borrowed name. The fading bruise beneath her temple remained visible. So did the raw band around her throat where the collar had rested. "I am Seralyne of the First House," she said. "My blood confirms my name. My word confirms the claim filed for every person listed in these manifests. They are citizens under royal protection. Any order to destroy them is unlawful." The station demanded a second sample. She held her palm down while the plate heated from blue to white. Elias smelled burned cloth and reached for her, but Seralyne locked her elbow and completed the scan herself. The authentication spread through the network. Carrier by carrier, the designation hereditary asset disappeared. Protected witness replaced it. On the closest ship, a guard lowered his weapon. Another opened the prisoner's restraints. 8,412 life signs changed from commercial inventory to living testimony. Then every targeting lattice snapped inward, not toward the carriers, toward the observation spine. Identity confirmed. Khepri's system announced. Royal fugitive located. Blast doors sealed behind Elias with a concussion that shook dust from the ceiling. His wrist console flashed as Earth's consular corridor revoked his transit clearance. The human extraction beacon went dark. No asylum route. No military repatriation. No legal road home. Seralyne lifted her scorched hand from the plate. "You should have stood away." Elias tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped her palm, one slow turn at a time. "I did that once." A new transmission filled the glass. Ordenvay's image stood beneath the prefect's black standard, his expression smooth while Khepri's weapon capacitors screamed through the bulkhead. "Princess," he said, "your prisoners will live. Your human will not leave this station." The first cannon locked onto their coordinates, and Elias's dead extraction beacon began counting down to impact. White fire gathered beyond the observation glass, bleaching the stars from view. The deck turned hot beneath Elias's boots as Khepri's cannon reached full charge. 3 seconds remained. Seralyne pressed her uninjured hand against the bulkhead, bracing for an impact the thin observation spine could never survive. Elias studied the prison carriers suspended outside. Their running lights blinked in staggered blue rows, each vessel still protected by the commercial dispute he had filed. "Open a channel to every helm," he said. "The station will block it." "Not through the station." He pulled the bandage tighter around her burned palm and placed his dead extraction beacon in her hand. Its casing felt warm, its glass dark. Earth revoked the corridor, not the emergency transponder. Understanding sharpened her face. Seralyne drove the beacon against the exposed blood seal plate. Royal authentication crossed with human military identification, and the device came alive with a thin, piercing tone. Elias spoke into it. "Carrier captains, Khepri is firing on a protected witness. Any ship remaining in the prefect's weapons grid will share liability for her death." The countdown reached 1. Mirasdal answered first, his voice cracking through static. "Move my transports." Thrusters ignited across the darkness. One carrier rolled between the cannon and the observation spine. Then another followed. Then 12. Khepri aborted the shot rather than destroy vessels claimed by its largest creditors. The gathered charge discharged into coolant banks with a metallic roar. Frost burst from ceiling vents, turning Seralyne's breath white. Elias did not wait. The station had a fleet. He had its fear of losing money. He fed false firing solutions through the emergency channel, marking Khepri's defense platforms as collision hazards. Civilian tugs scattered. Auction yachts broke formation. Prison carriers spread into a shield around the observation spine, their captains acting to protect their disputed cargo and themselves. Orden's command net filled with overlapping refusals. "Stand down," the prefect ordered. No one obeyed. Then black-hulled security cutters emerged from Khepri's shadow. They carried no insurers, no civilian crews, and no reason to hesitate. Their engines burned red against the eclipse as they accelerated toward the carriers. Elias opened his pulse pistol and removed its ruined targeting wafer. The weapon would never fire accurately again, but its military encryption core still worked. He seated the wafer inside the observation spine's maintenance transmitter. Hot copper filled the air. "What are you doing?" Seralyne asked. "Giving them one enemy." His command key entered every carrier's navigation system through the manifests they had distributed. For 9 seconds, Elias assumed remote authority over the formation. He turned 8,412 prisoners into the center of a moving fortress. The carriers rotated as one, drive plumes washing the cutter's sensors in ion glare. No missiles launched. No hulls ruptured. The security ships simply lost sight of their targets and overshot into open space. But the maneuver burned out the carrier's automated docking permissions. None of them could return to Khepri. Elias had saved them by making their departure irreversible. The formation opened a corridor toward the outer shipping lanes. Seralyne looked at the thousands of lights moving away, then at the humans standing beside a smoking transmitter with no ship, no pension, no government, and now no weapon worth carrying. Orden's image returned on the glass. The polished calm was gone. "You call this mercy?" Elias watched the last carrier clear the weapons grid. "No," he said. "Evacuation." Behind Orden, officers began removing their prefect's insignia from the command display. Yet one signal remained fixed inside Khepri, a sealed auction registry carrying direct authorization for Seralyne's sale. The authorization bore a royal command cipher. Seralyne stepped toward the glass as the code resolved. It belonged to someone who had possessed the legal power to sell a princess. And to start the war, Elias had just forced the fleet to refuse. A low chime pulsed from the auction registry, too soft for an alarm and too steady to ignore. Amber code spilled across the observation glass, warming the steel beneath Seralyne's burned palm. The cipher was genuine, not copied, not forged. She pressed 2 blood-marked fingers to the final authorization seal, and the registry unfolded into a declaration recorded 3 days before her capture. Her own face appeared in the glass. "By sovereign authority," the recording said in Seralyne's voice, "I transfer my person, title, and hereditary claim into bonded custody." Elias did not move. Cooling metal ticked inside his ruined pulse pistol. Far beyond the station, the freed carriers dwindled into pale blue points. Seralyne watched her recorded mouth finish the order. Then she entered the revocation phrase only the reigning bloodline could use. The system rejected it. Authorization remains voluntary, the registry announced. Revocation prohibited by issuer. Ordenvay's image expanded beside hers. Sweat shone along his temple under the command Dex violet light. You signed it, he said. The war began with you. Seralyne turned the collar's dead control ring between her fingers. Its inner edge was rough where the circuitry had burned her. Play the biometric layer. Orden's jaw tightened. The signature is valid. Play it. She struck the glass with her royal seal. The registry obeyed. A second waveform appeared beneath the recording. Heartbeat, blood chemistry, neural cadence. All hers. One line flashed red. Consent latency, 11 seconds. Elias leaned closer. Human military coercion protocols used a simpler threshold, 2 seconds between command stimulus and voluntary response. 11 meant the speaker had been chemically conscious but denied control of her muscles. The cipher belonged to Seralyne. The choice did not. Orden stared at the red line as bridge officers behind him went still. Mirasdal broke the silence over an unsecured channel. Cargo engines thundered through the station's hull as his transports shifted away from Khepri's weapons grid. My insurers will not cover a throne built on coerced title transfer, he said. Move every vessel under my bond. One by one, commercial markers peeled from Orden's formation. Seralyne could have claimed innocence then. Instead, she opened the registry to every ship, tribunal, and royal province still listening. Her recorded face vanished. The living princess remained, pale beneath the amber light, one hand bandaged and the other resting on the collar that had named her property. The blood seal is mine, she said. The command cipher is mine. And because my enemies used my authority, every order issued through it remains my responsibility until I break it. Elias looked at her. If you assume the cipher publicly, they can prosecute you for the sale. If I deny it, they can sell everyone whose chains carry my seal. She authenticated the coercion record and attached it to a sovereign annulment. The station trembled as thousands of ownership certificates collapsed at once. Red asset codes turned white. Across the departing carriers, hereditary bonds dissolved permanently. In the same instant, the royal network stripped Seralyne of succession protection and classified her as a claimant under arrest. She had traded her crown's immunity for the legal freedom of those already beyond Khepri. Orden's remaining guards withdrew from his command rail. His insignia disappeared from the glass. Elias stepped between Seralyne and the security hatch as its locks opened, though the pistol at his side was now only scorched metal. Orden entered alone. The air carried hot insulation and the bitter scent of recycled smoke. He removed his prefect's badge, placed it on the deck, and looked past Elias to the princess. You have no fleet, he said. Seralyne closed her fingers around the broken collar. Neither do you. Behind Orden, the last carrier captains transferred formation authority, not to a throne, but to the human beacon that had guided 8,412 prisoners out. Elias's dead transmitter flickered back to life. Every free ship was waiting for his command. Orden faced him across the cold steel. They escaped, he said. What war is left to fight? Elias set the useless weapon down beside the prefect's badge, the one that ends with her free. Cold blue light swept across the observation spine as the free carriers turned in formation beyond the glass. Their engines made no sound through the vacuum. Yet Elias's transmitter trembled against the deck, alive with 8,412 identification pulses. Ordenvay stood between the open security hatch and the discarded prefect's badge. Order them to stand down, he said. Without immunity, she is subject to arrest. Elias did not reach for the beacon. He looked at Seralyne instead. The broken collar rested in her burned palm, its inner contacts blackened, its ownership light still glowing amber. Orden extended one bare hand. Come willingly, and the formation remains untouched. Metal cooled with soft ticking sounds around them. Seralyne stepped forward before Elias could block her path. Then she placed the collar, not her wrist, in Orden's hand. Execute the warrant, she said. Orden's jaw tightened. It already has been. A red sigil appeared above the collar. Royal asset, detain. Elias lowered himself beside the prefect's badge and opened the formation channel. His voice passed into every carrier cockpit. Captains, you gave me authority to end this conflict. A chorus of acknowledgments crackled through the smoke-stained transmitter. Then hear my final command. No ship fires. No ship threatens Khepri. Hold position. Orden glanced toward the glass. The carrier formation stopped advancing. For the first time, nothing stood between him and Seralyne except a former bodyguard with an empty holster. You surrender the only leverage you have, Orden said. No, Elias lifted the ownership ledger transferred during the auction. I'm using it. The amber light on the collar shifted to white. Under interstellar property law, the purchase remained valid until formally dissolved. Seralyne's coerced royal authorization had been annulled, but Elias's acquisition bond still named him as her legal owner. The word made his throat tighten. He pressed his thumb to the ledger. I release all claim to Seralyne. Present and hereditary. Irrevocably. The system rejected it. Owner liable for outstanding sovereign warrant. Orden watched him understand the price. If Elias assumed that warrant, it would attach to his identity across every signatory system. No pension remained to seize. No transit clearance remained to revoke. What remained was his legal personhood, his right to command, contract, dock, or return home under his own name. Seralyne caught his wrist. Her fingers were warm beneath the medical binding. You have already given enough. Elias remembered that same hand closing around her thumb beneath auction light. A warning without words. A request to find the list, not save her. This time, she did not signal danger. She simply held on. You freed them, he said. Let me finish my post. He accepted the warrant. The ledger burned his biometric identity from its civilian registry. His beacon went dark. Across the glass, command lights passed from his transmitter to the carrier captains, one vessel after another, until the formation belonged wholly to the freed. Then the collar opened. Its white glow vanished. Orden's warrant display searched for Seralyne and found no royal asset, no bonded prisoner, no lawful property. Only a woman standing before him. He could arrest Elias. He could not take her. Orden closed his hand around the dead collar. For several breaths, the station ventilation and the distant hum of engines filled the spine. Then he stepped aside. Seralyne did not leave. She bent, picked up the prefect's badge, and placed it in Orden's palm beside the collar. 8,412 witnesses, she said quietly. They will remember what you do next. Orden looked through the glass at the carriers that no longer obeyed him. His fingers closed around both symbols. He lowered his hand. Go. Seralyne turned to Elias. The man who had crossed a fleet for her now possessed no recognized name beyond that window. She touched her blood seal to his dark beacon and transferred the first citizenship issued under her surrendered authority, not royal protection, but equal standing among the people she had freed. His identity returned on the carrier network with a single designation, Elias, free person. The hatch opened onto a waiting shuttle. Neither bowed. Neither looked back. Behind them, the broken collar lay beside Orden's badge in the cold blue light. Elias had begun a war to save a princess, but he ended it by making certain there were no owners left. Only two free people walking home together.